Zalem, the great utopia, a city full of grandeur and wonderment, a technological marvel and the embodiment of human spirit, human desire, human effort, and human achievement. A city so surrounded in mystery that the average person will never learn its secrets in a lifetime. Yet, it remains an icon of hope and a lingering message saying welcome to the brave new world. Or rather, welcome to another episode of Alita Battle Angel / GUNNM videos. And as you can imagine, today's video is about Zalem. Now I think I can safely say that Zalem was one of the subjects of great mystery and intrigue to a lot of the people who went to see the movie. It was also one of great frustration because by the time they left the movie, they did not know any more about the city than they did when they started the movie. And many people have complained about the fact that they would have liked to have learned a lot more about the city. And so while I wanted to always make a video with regards to Zalem, but for the longest time I held back because I wasn't sure if the reveals were going to be too much. There was going to be too much reveals in talking about the city. There are some important information that comes out based upon the comic regarding the city, and I wasn't sure if I should create a video to reveal that information or not. But the reason I'm making this video is I've come to the point where I no longer can really talk about a lot of the subjects that I wanted to do in the future without revealing some information about Zalem and its inhabitants. And so I decided that I will make this video with a strong spoiler alert. So if you've only watched the movie and have not read the original series Battle Angel Alita, then I will be talking about a lot of spoiler information, including one major reveal that currently resides only in the head of Destinova as a mystery. And I'm not sure if you want to be revealed with that, and as such I wanted to warn you that I will be talking about that information. And so if you do not want to hear about any of this revealing information, then I suggest that you turn off this video. However, if you don't mind hearing about it and would like to know more about the world of Zalem and Earth and the Battle Angel Alita comic verse, then please join us for this video. And with that, as always, please watch at your discretion. Okay, so Zalem. So as we know from the movie as well as the source material, that Zalem is one of the last great sky cities on Earth. And specifically for the movie, it is the one sky city that survived the Great War as well as the Night of the Fall. And now it is considered the city of privilege, the city of utopia, this mysterious city that hangs up in the air to give a sense of wonder and awe to the people of Iron City, as well as a curiosity to the viewers of the first movie. There always is a thought of what is the lifestyle like up in Zalem? And to many, such as Hugo, it represents a perfect life that they could get to if somehow they could get up to the city. And so, of course, I understand the frustration for many of the people who watched the movie that they could not get more information with regards to Zalem. However, I do have to say that compared to many of the manga readers, it'll probably come earlier, in that the manga readers probably, if I remember, had to wait like 12 years, something like that, until Last Order came out before they even got some idea of what Zalem is like. And even now, there really isn't a significant amount of information with regards to what the lifestyle of Zalem was like, even in the current era of the manga, and we probably will really not know because of the fact that by the time Alita got to Zalem, the city was in total chaos with the majority of the people dead. And so, what was the lifestyle like? It's a little bit hard to say. We do get a little bit of information during the Tooned arc because of some of the people up there, such as Lou Collins and Bigot Eisenberg, but it is really isolated to that one small office of the Tooned organization, so we really still don't know that much about Zalem. However, from the bits and pieces that you get reading the various manga, you do get some idea of what Zalem is like. You get some vision. And maybe each individual reader has a little bit different style, but overall, you get some kind of image of what Zalem was like prior to that chaotic fall. And the best way I can say it is that it was very similar to Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, in that it was a utopia. It was a place of peace and prosperity. But like a lot of utopias, including the Brave New World, that peace and prosperity came at a price. Basically, the price of conformity. I feel that Zalem had this understanding that to be able to maintain its peace and prosperity, they had to make sure that its citizens lived and acted in a certain way that kept the peace going. And any deviation that went outside of this behavior was intolerated and immediately corrected. This can be seen in a lot of these things that the city did with its citizens, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But you could also see it from the situation, for example, that Dyson Ido experienced with his daughter. You see, his daughter did not represent the genetic perfection that was necessary to be accepted as a citizen of Zalem. And because she was a deviation outside of its tolerance, Dyson Ido had to make the cold choice of either accepting the termination of his daughter Alita or the exile of his entire family. And as you know, at the very end, he chose the latter. And although, his life down in Iron City is not one of ease or prosperity, I got a feeling that he may actually choose that over the life of Zalem due to the fact that at least he has his freedom down in Iron City. Now, this is my opinion, and other people may feel different, but I got a feeling that if Zalem did not change for the better and towards more human rights, then Dyson Needle may choose the life of Iron City rather than the prosperity of Zalem. And you could start understanding what the city may be like if you look at the personality of somebody like Chiren, who even now would choose the life of Zalem over the life of Iron City because of the fact that the poverty was far more painful than living in conformity and prosperity up in Zalem. And so to have some of these people accept that sort of lifestyle gave you an indication of what sort of society lived up in the city of Zalem. Also, from what I can tell, due to the genetic perfection that Zalem required of its citizens, everything indicates that cyborgs were not accepted as citizens up in Zalem. And you could see that even in the comic, because Daisuke Ido did not learn his cyber surgeon skills from Zalem. He learned it from an expert cyber surgeon down in Iron City. He may have been a good surgeon. I'm not sure about that, but at least he may have been a good surgeon. But he not only did not know about cyber surgery, he did not accept it as a proper medical procedure. He fought against that, saying that putting cybernetic limbs on the person was considered an act of blasphemy, and they should always be treated by genetics or regular surgery if possible. And it was only through his extremely painful experiences that he encountered in the side story of A Holy Night that he finally learned to accept and learn the skills and techniques of cyber surgery. And I would think that, considering the fact that even genetic anomalies such as Dyson Ido's daughter, Alita, was not tolerated, I would not think that cyborgs would be any more tolerated up in the city of Zalem. And that brings up a very interesting point, because of course they said that the final champion of Motorball would be able to go up to Zalem. And yet, to be able to be a Motorball contender, everyone had to accept becoming a total replacement cyborg because their body would not be able to withstand the game. And so, how would they be accepted up in Zalem? Well, that is a question that is left unanswered. Now, aside from the intolerance to physical imperfections, Zalem also had a strict intolerance to psychological imperfections. Any person who deviated outside of the psychological norm was quickly dealt with. And you could see that through two examples. The first was, of course, the creation of the Deckman, where the city of Zalem would entice people who were having physical problems to come in for treatment. And the treatment was that after they signed off on giving their rights to the people who gave the treatment, basically the city of Zalem would tear these people's bodies apart and expose the brain and scoop the brain up and put it into a Deckman and get them to work for the city doing utility sorts of things. Yes, that thing that you saw in the movie that looked like a robot is in fact a human being, at least in the comic. Now, the other one that you saw was those suicide treatment centers. And for those, Alita found out firsthand what they were. When she walked in and she heard all that wonderful music and the announcer, the radio or the speaker, said for her to relax. And then, of course, you weren't sure what happened inside, but the next thing you know, the whole building exploded and Alita came out, carrying some of the equipment that I guess attacked her. I guess they basically kill those suicidal people before they can cause problems to the rest of society. And so there was a significant amount of indication that there was intolerance in both the physical as well as the psychological deviations from what they called the standard norm. And finally, you could see that the city of Zalem took a significant amount of control over both the people of Iron City as well as the people of Zalem. And to keep control, the city used several different military enforcement options. And these included both the hunter-warrior group, who acted like assassins on contracts that were put on criminals by Zalem and the factory, as well as the factory robot defense group, of which in the movie you saw mostly as the Centurions, although there are other robots that come out in the comic. And between these two, they basically held down the law in Iron City. However, beyond this, there was also another group called the Ground Inspection Bureau or the Ground Investigation Bureau. And this group was a little bit higher up. I'm not sure if the factory robots were included as part of the GIB, but they at least included some very high-level skilled agents that will go around and do covert operations to do various missions that went beyond what the Hunter Warriors or the factory police robots could do. And of course, the organization that we get to see in the comic and we hope to see in the movie is the Tuned organization, which is part of the GIB. And so there are several layers of different forms of military police and covert operations that Zalem has on Iron City to keep control of its citizens. However, it doesn't remain just in Iron City because the factory robots, although they are not obviously around, do also patrol Zalem. And whenever there is any problem up in Zalem, then these factory robots will start moving and try to take control of the situation, such as when Lou Collins went rogue and went against the Tuned organization when Alita was in danger. And during that time, you saw the factory robots come in to take care of her. And if this scene is correct, then the method that they use to take care of people looks seriously frightening. I don't know what that syringe is or what it does, but just seeing that robot come in with just that syringe to take care of Lou Collins looks, very frightening. Now, later on, we do see similar syringes used on Bigot Eisenberg, and if those were the same syringes, then those were kind of frightening weapons, to say the least. But in any case, even though it looked like a utopia up in Zalem, the government still covertly made sure that there was no problems with regards to the peace and order that existed in the city, and they did not tolerate rogue sort of actions at all. And as you can imagine, although Zalem looks like a utopia, with its residents possibly being, much more advanced, much more benevolent sort of citizens, if conformity and the shadow police were governing Zalem, then you could imagine that the citizens of Zalem were really not much better than the citizens of Iron City. In fact, due to the major snob nature of the people in Zalem, most of them had a far worse personality than the citizens of Iron City. I mean, Dyson Ido was not the norm of Zalem. He seemed to be an anomaly, being so benevolent to and kind-hearted to people. And from the few people that we saw in Zalem, even after the chaos, many of them were very disturbing, to say the least. I mean, whether it was Jim Roscoe, who was the one who got so curious about the human anatomy that he took an axe and basically hacked one of the Destinovas to death, or Casey Roscoe, who, after the chaotic event that destroyed most of Zalem, he went into a Mad Max sort of survival of the fittest mode and went around bashing people with his dumbbell and splitting their skulls open. And even in a less violent sort of situation, such as with Nora Rafargu, she still has such a skewed and somewhat entitled sort of personality that she had a really hard time accepting Alita as anything but a robot. No matter how much Alita said that she was a human being, Nora had a really hard time accepting her as anything but a robot and kept on ordering Alita around as if she was Nora's servant. And so from the personality of the citizens of Zalem, as well as the conforming nature of its government, Zalem was far from the perfect society that it pretended to be. And finally, what most likely was the greatest example of how much the city of Zalem took control of its citizens came through what I often call the Great Reveal. And of course, all the comic readers know it because it was such a significant reveal in the story. And it changed a lot of the way you looked at things. But the Great Reveal, when I said in the beginning of this video that it was currently only in the head of Destinova, I didn't mean it figuratively, but I actually meant it literally. You see, at a certain age, all of the citizens of Zalem actually have their brains removed and replaced by these programmable chips, what I will call brain chips. And so during I think it's maybe like 18 years old or something like that, they take many rigorous tests up till that point to see if this child is going to grow up to be a good citizen, acceptable of Zalem's requirements, unlike Alita, Dyson Ido's daughter. And if they pass up till that point, then they undergo what they call, I guess, transition or a transformation, even enlightenment. And it is during that time that they receive that mark on the forehead. But that mark on the forehead comes because at that time they undergo operation and have their brains removed. And why I say it was in the head of Destinova is because in the comic, Destinova was the one who revealed it to people. And this, of course, was the thing that made the citizens of Zalem go into a chaotic fit and start killing each other, is when they realized that they didn't have a brain, but were controlled by just this artificial brain chip. And that included all of the citizens of Zalem. And so for the moviegoers, it brings up what I would call a different perspective. And what I mean by a different perspective is this. When we see Alita in the beginning of the movie, it takes us a little while to acclimate to her because of the fact that she is a cybernetic entity. Even though she has a human brain, because she has a mechanical body, it takes a while for many of the viewers to accept her as a person. But through her humanity and compassion and the great acting by Rosa Salazar, much of the audience feels that they can accept her as a human being. And we understand that she learns a lot of what it was to be compassionate through other people around her, including Dyson Ido. But if Dyson Ido is from Zalem, then he most likely has a brain chip. And that is again a big reveal in the comic because, of course, in Daisuke Ido's case, yes, that was exactly true. And of course, since Destinova was the one who revealed it, he also has a brain chip. And this brings up a very good point because of the fact that a lot of people think, oh, it takes a while for us to accept Alita as a human being because she has a mechanical body. But, compared to a real human like Dyson Ido, yeah, it'll take a while for us to accept. And then later you find out, wow, Dyson Ido is the exact opposite of Alita. He has a humanoid body, but an artificial brain. So now, after seeing the movie, I would like to ask the people who watched the movie but didn't read the comic, which do you think is the real human being? Now, if you did read the comic, then most likely eventually you come to accept the fact that they're both basically human beings, because it doesn't have anything to do with the brain or the brain chip or the mechanical body or the humanoid body, but it finally comes down to the point of the spirit, the soul, the essence of that person, whether that person has a brain chip or whether that person has a brain. And that reveal became a very interesting point as the story went on into Last Order. And because that is something beyond the point of Zalem, I will not bring it up here. But I did need to reveal this point because of the fact that when I discuss things in the future about the Last Order or Mars Chronicle, I'll have to assume that I can freely discuss this point, that many of the citizens have brain chips instead of brains. Now, the one curiosity that every comic reader noticed when they saw Alita Battle Angel was the final demise of Chiren. Now, as we all know, Chiren is also a citizen of Zalem, and yet in the movie, when Vector shows what happened to Chiren, as we all recall, the brain was part of that shipment. So of course that brought up a very strong question and a discussion of debate amongst the manga readers whether the movie will adhere to that brain chip reveal or actually have the Zalem citizens have a brain. And it will be interesting because if they have a brain rather than a brain chip, it will be really difficult to move on beyond the original series because there's a lot of things that come up in the Last Order with regards to the brain chip. And so how will they move forward? Maybe they're not looking that far ahead and so they don't really care. Maybe it was an error that people didn't realize that the story went on with regards to the brain chip and they forgot and put a brain into that scene. I'm not exactly sure, but it was a point of interest for a lot of people who read the manga and then went to watch the movie. And in the end, as much as we learned a lot about Zalem from indirect situations, because Zalem was in a chaotic nature, we did not really get to see so much of Zalem. The other thing is of course, by the time we get up to Zalem, we find out, of course, it's not the ultimate city in existence on Earth. There is another, even greater city called Jeru up on the top of the space elevator. And of course, between the two of them, they do make the Jerusalem space elevator. And much of the controlling entity does not exist in Zalem, but up in Jeru. And because of that, that is the reason why, even when you learn about Zalem, or when Alita reaches Zalem in Last Order, you don't really spend too much time learning about it because her focus ends up going to Jeru because that's where a lot of the controlling entities reside. And so Zalem just ends up being a pit stop, which is very interesting because of the fact that you spend so much time in the original comic series going, gosh, when are we going to get up to Zalem? When are we going to get up to Zalem? That's where we need to go. And when you get up there in Last Order, you find out that it's just a temporary place to be to get to Jeru, which is the true target that you need to get to. Now, I don't know if that's how it will be in the movie. It would be interesting if they do it that way. And if they do it either by the original ending of the original series or the new ending in Last Order. Much of that, of course, at the very end occurs up in Jeru. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Robert Rodriguez tackles this. And it'll be interesting to see if the movie version of Zalem will remain faithful to the source material. Anyway, that's about it for this video. And thank you very much for watching. And I'll continue on with more Alita Battle Angel / GUNNM videos in the future. At that time, I hope you join us. And until the next video, happy movie watching, happy anime watching, happy manga reading, and as always, have a nice day, everyone.